Hi everyone, Kultured Khun here. This is a heavy one I'm going to talk about today. I want to introduce a new series, and in speaking with Boza, Builder in Zambia, I'm going to start putting out more educational, informative, and entertaining videos. And these are videos that go back into the past to sort of unlock the truth of who we really are as intellectuals. Whether you're African, European, Asian, American, whatever, this is to inform, educate, and entertain in line with the organization I have just started. So I'm gonna title this video Afro Saxon. And I know for some people think it's a juxtaposition, but I'll explain why it's not the case. So you have American African or African American, whether you believe that America describes African or Africa describes American. You also have Asian American, you also have British African, African British, and so on and so forth. And these juxtapositions oftentimes are put together to draw meaning and to give honor and point towards the heritage of a person, identifying those labels. So firstly, I'd like to say that labels for me personally are limiting. I think facts for the most part only are the shadows of revelation, and the process of discovery, the journey in which one person goes to find out who they really are, is where the truth lies. So in particular, being Afro Saxon, yes, I'm an African, I'm Zambian, I'm a Bemba boy from the Bemba kingdom, but I don't necessarily say I would subscribe to being a traditional Bemba man or with some certain customs. I think a lot of these only come to play maybe if I'm getting married or going to a family event or a function, something like that. Aside from that, Africa, root word Africa, meaning sunny in Latin, or Africa, Aprika in the Greek, meaning without cold. And the original name of Africa was Alkebulan, which for some was Garden of Eden, the mother of nature. And for others, it was Kush. So when you hear about the land of Kush or the kingdom of Kush, they're referring to Africa. And also when you talk about Edenic imagery all across cultures and histories and texts and parables and symbology, they are referring to this great continent, the cradle of humanity. So now, you're probably wondering, why are we talking about being Afro-Saxon? Well, this series is pointing to an interesting idea, and the idea is being a coconut. So for a lot of my life, I've been called a coconut. So I'm going to title this Kultured Khun, Afro-Saxon, Part 1. And in further discussion, I want to break it down into 4 quadrants. I want to talk being a coconut socially, politically, economically, and educationally. And the reason why I'm breaking down into these 4 quadrants is because I could sit here and talk to you guys for an hour, but I know a lot of you have short attention spans. So I'm going to keep it short, sweet, succinct. So now, let's discuss being a coconut. So oftentimes when someone throws that claim at me, I'm like, oh, okay. Whether they call you a Muzungu, a Mayaya, a Chongololo, or whatever. So Muzungu means white person, for those of you white people who don't understand what I'm saying. And Mayadi is someone who lives in a yard. So Mayadi, a child who lives in the yard. And that's a social commentary. It's a mention of reference. Aside from that, you have Chongololo, which is an insect. What the fuck? Wait. Yo, this rigid class system. My God. Anyway, and with this mini-series, I'm going to talk about the commentary on class, the commentary on colonialism, the commentary on, again, information, education, and entertainment, because I've decided that this is going to be my focal point of engagement. I've changed my strategy of assault, being affectionate with my attack. I'm killing you all with kindness, and I'm going to be dropping facts, because a lot of you lives in text, you don't live contextually. Some of you, if someone doesn't mention in conversation a book, a fact, or a figure, you're turned off and you invalidate their viewpoint or their perspective. And that's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to edify, amplify, and educate some of you and level up your intelligence and also awaken you guys to a higher state of consciousness. Okay? So now let's go back to being an Afro-Saxon. So the reason why I mention Afro-Saxon as opposed to coconut is because if we look analogously what a coconut is, it's black on one side, well, not black, but brown, typically with hair on the outside. I'm not that hairy, but anyway. It's Brown on the outside, white on the inside. And when someone calls you a coconut in Africa, what they're trying to say is you're not one of us, which is an interesting thought because I think many of us are the sum total of the content we've consumed. So everything you've read, all the technologies you've interfaced with, every interaction you've had, whether that be encoded in whatever language it is, that is the weight of your person, or the words, or the references, or the images, or the symbols, everything you've ever interacted with is a sum total of who you are. So if you're educated in English, the likelihood is you think like an Englishman. If you read in English, if you're understanding this in English, if you create in English, if you speak in English, if you dream in English, the reality of that is you're an Englishman. And for us, Chizungu, notice I mentioned Muzungu and Chizungu. So Muzungu is white person, Chizungu is the language of the whites, typically English. And the idea of that was, or the idea is to separate the black people who were supposed to be sellouts and to capture that identity with a derogatory term to sort of claim power or influence over them. Because obviously you don't have power or influence over your own personal, social, political, economical situation. Correct? So now when I talk of being an Afro Saxon, I was educated in English, I read in English, I write in English, I speak in English, I dream in English, I've charmed the world with English. So by virtue, objectively speaking, I would be an Englishman, but subjectively, from my personal experience, I'm not. Because there is also the social fabric and the cultural context missing. I don't operate as an Englishman. So a lot of people who are like me, who maybe perhaps have a stronger accent or premonitions that would allude someone to believe that this person is more prone to being English or to being more white, find ourselves in this weird category of coconutism or Afro-Saxonism. And the Saxons were Germanic people from Northern Europe who moved across, took over the Anglos, which is English. So Anglo-Saxon comes from the term Anglo meaning English, Saxon, the Germanic people, and obviously, when cultures clash and people getting on what they're doing, people were made and descendants were Anglo-Saxons, which are the original inhabitants, or rather, the descendants of the conquered people who were inhabiting the English land. So when I say I'm an Afro-Saxon, I'm using Africa, the original person from Al-Kelbulan, Africa, Sunny, motherland, Kush, all that, describing the Englishman. It's a play on the word, the same coconut. And it's a more, I'd say, insightful take on what the reality actually is. Because the truth is, if your modus operandi is English, if you read, write, think, consume, create, and even behave as an Englishman, the truth is, objectively, you would be English. And so, to a certain extent, I'd have to agree. But then, to further that point, I'd have to rebut and say, but if your operating systems, the systems that govern your life, are just as English as mine, if you read the same English I read, you speak the same English I do, maybe not to the same level of frequency or accuracy or fluency, but you engage in English with the world. You vote in English. Your ballot paper has English. Your examination boards assess your English. When you want a job, they ask if you can infer English. When you try to do anything big, the official language is English. How are you then any separate from me? Because even when you talk about the idea of being an African, the original inhabitants of Kelbulan, living in these urban societies, in these urban spaces of land, has nothing African to do with that. And for the most part, a lot of us are Africans assuming their identities of Englishmen in Africa. So we're living on the land of our ancestors as the invaders who conquered our ancestors. And you ask me, what do you mean by that? You're wearing English clothes. You're consuming Anglo-American foods. If we do it very basically, you speak English, you drink European beer, you eat American foods, you wear Italian leather. You wear Italian leather. But then you somehow posit that the upper class, or the upper mambas, as we like to say here, are somehow more Mzungu than you, when on the relational plane which we are all coexisting together, you all live in the same reality I am. If anything, I could point to more similarities between you and the English middle classman or the English lower class working man. So I'm releasing this video, one, to point out the hypocrisy that a lot of us are faced with, two, to provoke thought into examining your past and examining the institutes of information where you get meaning from life. So whether it's family, friends, fans, followers, I want you guys to really engage with this content and to question yourselves. Am I an Englishman? So yes, I speak in English, I think in English, I dream in English, I write in English. The lifestyle I'm adhering to and the lifestyle I desire is English. The luxuries that I want to lavish myself with are English or European. And even the visions I have for myself and the people around me are Eurocentric. So how then are you any less English than I am? Objectively speaking. Now, subjectively, obviously, we all have our personal experiences and life is a personal journey. But if you could answer those simple questions just for yourself and maybe leave a comment down below, that would be interesting. You know what I mean? And so, in context with being an Afro Saxon, I'm going to tackle the quadrants of, again, social, political, economical, and educational in the videos to come. Aside from that, I also want to dive into the true scars of colonialism, one of which I think is contingency. And I spoke about that in my previous video, Boza, Build on Zambia. And I think one of the true scars of colonialism, which was the whole imperialist system, divide and conquer, yada, 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 was contingency. And the reason why I say this is because the systems that hold up the lifestyles and the philosophies and the principles and the policies that we prop up with our very beings by adhering to them, to the rules, the regulations, and the rubric written for us, originally by Englishmen, are not ours. And it's why I'm making this effort to be more proactive about content creation, because I believe content creation is knowledge. You know, it's a shame that in my generation we tend not to probe so much the ideas that float around us, and we tend to be very accepting. But then I realize we are victims of indoctrination. Ever since we were little kids, we were programmed via the channels of television what to think, how to consume data. And for the most part, we're very receptive of information and not as critical when thinking these out. And we tend not to flesh out ideas or to think out loud. And this is my effort of thinking out loud, even with this new channel. I want to have a record of me and my intrusive thoughts winning. And I want people to have a similar process of discernment and self-evaluation, and with that grow. So I'm hoping that you guys engage, interact, and comment down below. I know some of you feel shy, but please don't. This is a channel for everyone, in as much as it's for me, and I'd like to have a record of myself and immortalize me into the virtual town square. I'd also like you guys to participate, and the reason why I'd like you to participate is because we can help grow each other. We can comb out some of the contradictions which we're holding on to, and we can remove the kinks from our brains as opposed to the kinks from our hair in trying to become more Eurocentric. So yes, I am an Afro Saxon, and this is a new beginning. So I hope you guys enjoy, or at least enjoyed, this brief introduction to the series, and that you've left a comment down below, whether it's some referrals to articles you'd like me to read, anything you'd like me to comment on, or even just your comments and thoughts on what I've said. I've brushed over a lot of things briefly because I want to go in depth on each of the quadrants in my videos to come. But subsequent to this, I will delve deeper into our discussions. So thank you guys. I hope you have a great day. Kultured Khun.